This video was made possible by our generous supporters on Patreon. Check out patreon.com/NWR for all the details.
Depending on your experience with the Metroid series, you might have some knowledge of the bird-like Chozo, a race of creatures that is an incredibly important part of the in-universe lore. You know those statues that Samus gets power-ups from? Those are Chozo statues. You might remember them as the haunting and challenging Chozo ghosts that appear in Metroid Prime. Maybe you have some passing knowledge of how Samus was supposedly raised by Chozo. That's where she got her power suit and abilities, don't you know? The Chozo are also responsible for the creation of the Metroid, and depending on your interpretation of canon, also Mother Brain. There's also a Chozo doing weird tech stuff in the reveal trailer for Metroid Dread, and if you've been keeping an eye on the story threads snuck into Metroid Samus Returns, it seems like the intentionally benevolent race might be getting deliberately malevolent in the next game in the series. To get you ready for Metroid Dread, we're going to break down just who exactly the Chozo are and why they're so dang important. The Chozo are an ancient race that predate the history of the Metroid series by hundreds of years. The bird-like creatures are extremely advanced, both with their technology and physical abilities. While a lot of the finer details of the hundreds of years before Samus Aran's birth are unknown, the Chozo had a tendency to colonize other planets, but they aspired to do it humanely, aiming to just help the worlds develop and not destroy anything in the process. But unfortunately, as is often the case when races of people try to play God, things went south. We don't know the full extent of what the Chozo have done, but their track record is, well, honestly terrible. We have a few examples of Chozo groups that we're going to go through, mixing together what's presented in the games with some added details from the Nintendo-made Manga. Before we start tossing out L's for our bird friends, let's solidify their one concrete victory. A group of Chozo were around after a space pirate attack that decimated the planet K-2L. They found the only survivor, a young girl named Samus Aran. They raised her, giving her an infusion of powerful Chozo DNA, raising her to be an incredible warrior who benefited from the capabilities of their custom-made power suit. Quick side note, Samus's parents are apparently canonically named Virginia and Rodney. I'm all for Samus having some fleeting memories of her parents calling each other like Hot Rod and Ginny, but considering Samus sounds so sci-fi unique, it's wild that the seemingly canon names for her parents are just basic-ass Earth names. Anyway, Samus was whisked away to the nearby planet Zebes, where the Chozo brought her up as one of their own. Throughout the Metroid manga, a number of Chozo are mentioned, and because the manga never released outside of Japan, they only have names from unofficial translations. So there's one immortally named Platinum Chest. That's Platinum Chest. But there are really only two that need further detail: Old Bird and Grey Voice. You can best sum these two Chozo up as Samus's two dads. Old Bird was the more loving one, raising her to be the best warrior she could be, while also being the primary actor in saving her in the first place on planet K-2L. Her relationship with Grey Voice is a little more strained. He was against rescuing her as a child, and when disaster struck, he appeared to turn on his people. The planet Zebes that Samus was raised on might sound familiar, because it's the setting for both Metroid and Super Metroid. Disaster struck when the space pirates attacked Zebes. When that happened, Grey Voice turned against Samus and the Chozo, siding with the space pirates and Mother Brain. You know how raising Samus was one of the Chozo's only victories? Well, the losses are about to accumulate. See, according to the Metroid manga, Mother Brain was created by the Chozo on Zebes. Mother Brain teamed up with the space pirates and Grey Voice to try to rule the galaxy. That's a big miss. You made an AI and it's just going to rule the galaxy. But it turned out that Grey Voice turning heel was just a ruse. He turned on Mother Brain, donning a power suit to try to destroy her. However, Ridley wound up impaling the Chozo and blasting him to bits with his plasma breath. That's a bad end for Grey Voice. This all predates the events of the original Metroid, setting the stage for Samus' return trip to Zebes to face off against the villains who murdered a surrogate father and laid waste to her home planet twice over. If you replay Metroid Zero Mission, a lot of Samus' childhood is teased throughout the game in artwork and asides. The picture seemingly drawn by a child Samus of her holding hands with two Chozo are likely of her with Grey Voice and Old Bird. But in all of this mess, what happened to Old Bird? We still really don't know. The last we heard of Old Bird was around the start of the first Metroid game, where, according to the manga, he was talking with Chozo elders about another threat, the X-Parasite and the Metroid. While everything with Old Bird isn't necessarily hard canon, this is something that might be relevant to what's to come in Metroid Dread. While Old Bird, Grey Voice, and Samus were on Zebes, other Chozo wound up on the planet SR-388. They did their regular colonizing work, but soon discovered the deadly X-Parasite, a vicious creature, unlike anything they had ever encountered before. The X-Parasite were extremely hostile, slaughtering other life forms on the planet and then assimilating these fallen creatures into their horde. Think The Thing of John Carpenter fame. After seeing the X-Parasite's destructive power, the Chozo tried to contain the spread to SR-388. They did that by creating the Metroid. To contain one parasitic life form, they went off and just made a bigger one. But hey, initially it worked. The X-Parasite were thwarted, and the Metroid were contained to SR-388. The Chozo did their job, at least initially. The Metroid quickly took over the planet, evolving rapidly in SR-388's environments. The Chozo on the planet tried to figure out what to do, but eventually, one of the Chozo leaders slaughtered the dissenting Chozo and set out to, well, we're probably going to figure out what he wants to do in Metroid Dread. Odds are, it isn't very nice, and it probably involves using Metroid and/or the X-Parasite to take over the galaxy. Of course, there's also another element to the Metroid portion of this not directly related to the Chozo. The Galactic Federation found Metroid specimens at some point and studied them, which eventually led to the space pirates stealing these Metroid and then trying to weaponize them in the events of Metroid and Super Metroid. Way to go, Chozo. Way to go, Galactic Federation. Y'all done messed up. That's basically it for Chozo in the 2D Metroid series. We'll likely get some sort of conclusion to their story in Metroid Dread, but probably not enough to definitively tell us what happened to all of the Chozo. This is Samus' story, after all. But maybe there's another Metroid game on the horizon with Chozo ties all of their own. Different Chozo pop up in the Metroid Prime series, most predominantly in the first Metroid Prime. As the story goes, a group of Chozo came to Talon 4, the setting of Prime 1, with the intention of getting back to the roots of... honestly, who knows, the Chozo are weird. Apparently they were trying to be like spiritual, but all we know about the Chozo is they try to colonize planets and control things. Regardless, this group of Chozo was peacefully hanging out until a meteor crashed into Talon 4, infecting the planet with the poisonous Phazon. The Chozo tried to limit the damage of the Phazon, but in their efforts, they were largely driven mad and torn between the world of the living and the dead as Chozo ghosts, which you will likely remember with ire because those bosses were hard as hell in the game. By the end of Prime 1, the Chozo on Talon 4 are almost all gone, all lost to Phazon in some capacity. However, a logbook entry from Metroid Prime 3 actually mentioned that there were some survivors. But where did they wind up? No one knows. Maybe that's a Prime 4 thing though, we still got time. Metroid Prime 3 actually discusses the origins of the Talon 4 Chozo though. They started off on the planet of Elysia, one of the places that you journeyed to during the plot of the third Prime game. Hundreds of years before the events of Metroid Prime 3, the Chozo built Skytown, but then left for Talon 4 after giving the robotic Elysians sentience. Since the Chozo were integral to the creation of Skytown, the place is just dripping with bird-like iconography. And that's the history of the Chozo as we know it. Intrepid colonizers who unleashed Metroid definitely and Mother Brain potentially across the galaxy. They might have done more harm than good, but hey, there wouldn't be a Metroid series without them. They're all seemingly long gone now, so... oh yeah, right, one of those bird bastards is still alive. So to conclude this recap of Chozo lore, let's try to figure out just what this button-pressing Chozo is up to on ZDR. First off, seeing this Chozo moving around and living it up on screen could be the first time we see a Chozo alive during the events of a game. And it's just weird to think. Now, there's a chance that the clip we see in the Dread trailer could be a flashback or something to that effect, but considering that this Chozo is most likely the traitorous and murderous one from Samus Return's secret ending, he might be behind the mystery of what's happening in Dread, what with the X-Parasite not being gone and all. While Metroid Dread connecting to the game made right before it is the most likely, I suppose we can't totally roll out that this Chozo connects to another part of the canon. Could this be Old Bird, named for the first time in a Metroid game? While less likely than Old Bird returning, there are Chozo from Metroid Prime still out there in the galaxy, but 2D Metroid and the Prime series don't really intersect all that much. No matter what happens with these mysterious bird peoples, they are a fundamental part of the Metroid series, which is wild to say because they are almost never seen and rarely talked about. We often see the remnants of their civilizations or their actions. Samus herself is a product of their machinations, nearly as much as the Metroid are. It's weird and fitting that for a series as mysterious as Metroid can be, a core group involved with the story since the beginning 35 years ago is rarely seen and still hugely important. Maybe Metroid Dread will wrap up the story of the Chozo that raised Samus and created the Metroid. Maybe that's the end that Dread will bring. I hope you enjoyed this trip down Chozo memory lane. Tried to get all of the Chozo lore in there, since after seeing that bird guy show up in the Metroid Dread trailer, there's definitely some thoughts about how that might tie into the game. I'm curious. I want to know. I want to find out. What's that Chozo story? Is he the bad guy? Is he a good guy? Are we going to be somewhere in the middle? I don't know. But looking forward to it, and I hope you're looking forward to it as well. If you have any questions or comments or your own take on the Chozo lore, feel free to let us know in the comments, and we'll be back with way more Metroid coverage. We already have quite a bit up there, discussions about the trailers, stuff like that. We're going through a Metroid Game Club right now. If you were listening to this around when this is going up in early July or somewhere about that, we're going to be wrapping up Metroid 1 and Metroid Zero Mission, and then moving on to Metroid 2 and Metroid Samus Returns. We're planning to get through all the 2D Metroid before Metroid Dread comes out in October 2021. Very excited for it, and you should come and join along with us. Take the trip. Learn about Chozo. Be able to pronounce Zebus, Zebesians, or however you say it. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.
This video was made possible by our generous supporters on Patreon. Did you know that Nintendo World Report is funded directly by fans like you? When you support Nintendo World Report on Patreon, you get immediate access to multiple exclusive podcasts every month, exclusive Discord channels, an early look at select content, and more, all for as little as $1 a month. Check out patreon.com/NWR for all the details.